You wanna go in the garden? Let's do it. Coffee is not for dogs, Bear. Need it. Guys, I love in the mornings when the sun has not yet made it over this tree line and the garden has this soft glow. Do you see the sun on the trees over there? In about 45 minutes, this garden will be fully bright. This is actually the best time to harvest plants, before the sun hits them. So when I'm doing big harvests, a lot of times I get out here about 6:30 or so, so that I can get to the fruit on the plants before they've sat in the sun. They just have the most moisture in them, which makes it the best time. Unless you're harvesting like tomatoes and maybe peppers, like fruits that you want to be a little bit drier, because then they will have more flavor because it isn't as watered down. But like cucumbers and beans and lettuces and greens and stuff, you want to get them before the sun hits them. All right, today I want to talk to you guys about two things, and they are, I guess, unrelated. Maybe they aren't entirely. So here on the first trellis in my garden are a Thai long bean, like a noodle bean. And I began to notice a few weeks ago that they were getting pretty serious buildup of aphids. Let me see where I can show you a little better. And it looks like this. So these are all aphids. And that is pretty nasty, right? But I also want you to see these guys that are on these plants. Those little red and black guys, those are essentially baby ladybugs in their larval stage. And these bean plants, they're one trellis of plants, have thousands of aphids on them, but then they also have hundreds and hundreds of larval ladybugs feeding on the aphids. Ladybugs eat aphids. And I've seen a handful of adult ladybugs, but there are very, very many of the young ones. And when I first saw the aphids, my first thought was, I need to bring something out here and, you know, do something about that. And I actually got just a spray bottle of like soapy water with like peppermint oil in it. The thing with aphids really to do is just wash them off, mostly. You could put like neem or diatomaceous earth, but really just washing them off is really the most effective way, and just staying on top of it until you knock the population down. And I came out here intending to take the aphids off the plants when I saw the larval ladybugs. And I decided to just leave the whole thing alone. So the thing I wanted to talk to you guys about today, after showing you that, this is a pretty gnarly infestation. Like that's a lot of aphids on that. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about like my journey, I guess, of becoming an organic gardener. It's completely beautiful. It's actually very, very perfect outside. It got slightly chilly the last couple of nights, which I'm certainly not complaining at all, for it to cool down a little bit. But man, this morning, something else. Perfect. I wish I could let you feel it. Oh, I don't have very long of the lovely light. Do you see the lilies back there? The sun has touched them. Had some guys out here this week that knew a lot about cameras, and it was interesting because as I was obviously able to communicate to them what time there was different light on different parts of my property, because I shoot videos here for a living, and have for years. And they were like, wow, this is really convenient, like to already have the light like entirely scoped out by a client. But I'll get more to that in a little bit. So becoming an organic gardener. First, I want to preface this by saying, and I wrote this in my book and I've said it many times before, while I do 100% feel like organic gardening is the best and the most superior way to grow a garden for both our health and the health of the earth, I actually believe that conventionally grown home garden, which means to use conventional pesticides and chemicals, I think that is better than buying conventionally grown produce at the store. Because there's just no way that even if you are using maybe something that's detrimental to the ecosystem of your home garden or the soil or anything like that, it's still less of a negative impact than using a lot of gasoline and all of the things that are involved in commercial farming. Ooh, there's the sun. Alright, I'm gonna turn around so that's not shining bright in my eyes. Now, I used to just use whatever was marketed at the store to take care of my garden. I went, and if it said garden spray, a lot of times it said things on it like safe for eating after 24 hours, or, you know, it really would try to market to you the safety of it. And the effectiveness, and there was all of these, they're just chemical products that are all over. I mean, if you go to the box stores or the home stores or whatever, you're gonna see garden maintenance products, and many of them are actually non-organic chemical products. And I used to spray all of that stuff, like when I first gardened, when I had small gardens, because I'd never done any research about it. I was just honestly ignorant to it. I had not done a ton of gardening, and in my mind, pests are bad. Pests are going to keep me from a harvest. I'm gardening for the harvest, and so I'm going to spray this stuff, and I did. Well, the first year that we started to build this big garden, so we started with just a couple of these long beds and a couple of the small beds. We did not have even half the garden built. It was obviously a lot more to take care of than I was used to, and I could no longer just go buy like a little spray bottle because the garden was too big. And when the pests started to come, I didn't get them like sprayed. I didn't do anything for it simply because of the time commitment and buying the stuff. I mean, it was kind of expensive, and truly, like, I could not justify spending so much money on all of, like, lots of sprays and chemicals to keep the insects off when I was really growing the garden trying to offset our grocery budget. And I was started to think, man, buying all of this stuff is going to make this homegrown produce exponentially more expensive than what I'm able to buy at the store. And what happened is, over that spring season, you know, we planted late March, early April, probably February, like the cold weather stuff. And then over the season, as things really began to grow and take off, I would come out to the garden on mornings like this, and I would bring my coffee, and I would walk around, and I would see hummingbirds and butterflies. And that was the first year that I ever had a garden spider, the big yellow banana spiders, or riding spiders, what some people call them. And I became just enamored by this ecosystem that was happening in my garden. And at the time, I genuinely did not make the connection that it was happening because I wasn't spraying anything. And I wasn't spraying anything not because I was making some like strong moral decision, but because I was really wrestling with the cost of those kinds of things. And at the time, I really didn't know anything about like buying bulk mixes and all the different things. So I just did nothing for a little while. And I remember it was probably about early June. The garden was kind of getting to this borderline wild stage. Things are really starting to come on. And I thought, I got to get this stuff sprayed or I'm going to lose my harvest. And so I went and bought like a bottle of something that was a concentrate at the store. It was probably like 20 bucks. And I bought a sprayer, and I came home and I mixed it up. And I just did what I'd always done, and I sprayed my whole garden. And I remember the next morning being really devastating because I came out and my riding spider was gone. And the garden just had a stillness to it that it hadn't had that whole season. And I realized that broadcasting products like that it costs something, you know, like it's not just a matter of, oh, well, I need to keep my harvest, so I have to spray this. And at that point, it was really kind of a revelation for me, because all of a sudden the garden just became like a picture of life, and it is. I mean, I share this with you guys so much. I'm so inspired and wooed in my garden, and I just, you know, it's my place of prayer, it's my sanctuary. I feel, it feels like a classroom to me. I feel like I learn a lot of things, and the thing that I came to is that my life has never been like sterile. Like, my life is just littered with growing mistakes, I guess you could say, pain, and I essentially learned in the garden, I realized that if your goal is a perfect harvest, you can spray all that stuff and you may get your perfect harvest. Like, you may pull in all that food. You'll need to wash it off because it's not safe to just snack on straight out of the garden. There's limitations on that perfect harvest. It may look perfect, but is it perfect? I mean, if it's not fully safe to consume. But the other thing is, like, going after a perfect harvest costs you the experience of a garden that's alive. Now, going after a garden that's alive costs you imperfections. You cannot have perfection and life in the same place. And this was just such a word to me that I really felt like the Lord showed me through the garden. Like, you cannot have perfection and abundant life in the same place. And like, that's okay. Like, it's completely okay. And to me, my garden at that point just became a representation of like this beautiful, abundant life that has so many imperfections and has loss, but also produces a ton of fruit. I learned to plant a little bit more to make up for the fact that I was probably going to lose some. I learned to leave things alone that are in process, because like with those beans, the plant's looking a little rough at the bottom, but as soon as those ladybug larvae become full size, they will clean those off in a day. They will have all of those aphids eaten and clean, and I'll actually still get to harvest beans off that plant. However, if I came and I just knocked them all out right now, I would then hinder the ladybug population in years to come. And that's the thing with an organic garden and this organic life, is it's having a longer term goal. It's not striving after perfection. I'm not really just doing this for the harvest. Guys, I planted this garden this year. I'm not even harvesting most of it. I'm moving. And that really, to me, is a testament that like, I'm not doing this for the harvest. I'm doing this because I love the garden. And that has been such a lesson in my life. And I don't know, I came across those aphids the other day. And again, I went and I was like, I'm going to spray these off, you know, because I can do that. But then as soon as I saw all the larval ladybugs, I was like, yeah, better leave them, because this is in process. And though it looks like a blot on the perfection of my garden right now, this uncomfortable thing to see. I mean, it makes my skin crawl walking past that. I'm like, ugh, you know, I don't really love bugs. But like, when I see that, I'm like, oh, that's so nasty looking. And I've had a few people come in and be like, what is going on here? That is a ton of bugs. And I'll just explain this story. I've explained it to a few people, but like, that's in process. And though it's uncomfortable to have that process going on right now, it's an investment in the future health of my garden. And it's all about establishing populations. It's all about managing things intently so that they don't get out of hand and become issues. It's very interesting whenever you think of that analogy as this, you know, garden being such a representation of our life, and it so is to me. Look at that sun spilling all in here. I told you guys we had very limited time with the soft light. Isn't that funny how that happens so fast? Put my mug down here. All right, so next order of business. Many of you saw, I posted a couple little sneak peeks on Instagram, and I know there was some discussion about this, and several of you guessed right that we actually spent the first part of this week filming what will be the pilot episode for a TV show. I want to give you the backstory a little bit to where we've come as far as this is concerned. The first thing is, it's not going to take YouTube away. I know a lot of people assume when we do something new, like, oh, are you going to stop doing YouTube? And no, the answer is absolutely not. Years ago, before we had YouTube, before we had anything like that, Jeremiah and I used to have people tell us regularly, like, hey, I keep seeing you with a TV show. I just keep seeing this over your life. I'm going to try to tell this story kind of like in short, the best that I can. When you become a YouTuber, your channel doesn't have to get super huge and this starts happening. You start getting a lot of casting directors, producers, that sort of thing, agencies trying to bring you into TV. And this is not just the case for us. We've talked to many of our friends that have gone through the very time-consuming process of like interviewing and creating sizzle reels and pitches to try to pitch them to agencies and networks to either make new shows or be guests on like an episode of an existing show. I've known some people that have done it, had really great experiences being like a guest on an episode, and I know some people that did it years ago and had a really negative experience in which they hadn't. So we kind of had this all in our mind, and we've talked to multiple places. We've like gone through different interviews, and my prayer, and this was even before we had YouTube, that people started to approach us because we were sharing our homestead on Instagram. And my prayer was always, if this is not right and if this is going to be detrimental to our family, to shut the door on it, please, Lord. And the door is always shut, and there have even been times that we've been like, we're not really feeling great about this. They're trying to push us to say things or do things that we don't want to say, and we're just not interested. If this opportunity requires us to like be untrue to who we are, it's not an opportunity. And so we shut the door on certain things, and it's just been like this ongoing thing that's been happening kind of in the background for years now, that we have been exploring these options and weighing them out. And of course our platform has grown, which of course opens up more doors, but I've just always had this take of like, if I have to push this door open, I'm gonna have to hold it open, and so I don't want to do that. Like, if we do this, I want it to be the right situation. I definitely don't want it to cost my family health in any way. And I don't want to have to present ourselves as something other than what we are, because this platform that we have here on YouTube has been authentic. Like, and we have friends that we've had for a long time that tell you, like, you see what you get. Like, this is just actually who we are. And I'm glad for that. I don't want to do anything other than that. We kind of had some other opportunities present themselves, and we're weighing some different things out and trying to decide how heavily we wanted to pursue them. And I went to North Carolina in February and visited my friends, the Rhodes. And at the time, Rebecca was pregnant. I went out there to spend some time with her before the baby came and just celebrate the baby. While I was there, one morning, I asked Justin if I could just kind of shadow him. And yes, to see how he does his farming, because I knew at that point that we were going to be moving on a larger scale, and I really wanted to implement some of the permaculture practices that he uses. But also, I wanted to watch his process in shooting videos, and I thought, I want to learn. I always want to be a student when I have an opportunity to learn. I kind of like followed Justin around that morning and asked him 7 million questions or something, because that's the kind of student that I am. And during that, I asked him kind of what the end goal was on his docuseries that he had begun producing, his show Rooted. And we sat down, and this is a conversation that I will always remember. We sat down at this point we were at the kitchen counter straining milk, and he said, I want to make a network. I want this to be a bigger picture. And he was like, our community has been so jerked around by the TV industry, and people obviously want to watch this stuff. So I want to make something grassroots. I want to make something by us, by the people who are actually doing this stuff, because we know it's entertaining, but we also know what people want to learn. And he's like, and I want to create TV that people can sit their family down in front of and not feel worried about what ad is going to come on or what's going to start playing next. And I want to create something that's different than what already exists. Now, if you've been here with me for very long, you know that that is 100% a passion for me. I don't want to go inside the box and do what's always done. If I see a problem in an industry or in a system or the way of doing things, I want to change it. And so he was totally speaking my language. I didn't say anything at the time. I was just kind of like, okay, got my wheels turning, but I didn't want to be hasty. I don't like to say things that I don't mean. So I left, and I have pages written in my journal from that where I was really just processing, like, what does this mean? What could this look like? If this plays out, what would this look like in 5 years? What would it mean to have a network by homesteaders, by food growers, by families, by people who are wanting a simpler life and who are taking the measures to do that, rather than just trying to paint a picture of it. Like, what would this look like? And I got home and I discussed it in depth with Jeremiah, and I actually called a couple of people that I really trust for their thoughts and their opinions, and like, what would this look like? And there was kind of like this weighing out thing, because when on one hand you have major networks that are like, hey, we're interested in doing something, but the vision they have feels like it could lead to like a compromising place, and then you're talking to somebody that's like, hey, I want to build something from scratch. You know, we just really were like, what do we do here? And I finally came to the conclusion that building something from scratch that doesn't require compromise is always a better choice. It's always the better choice to go with the organic garden that's going to produce a harvest that you really want to have. And I talked to Maya, and I messaged Justin, and I said, hey, I know right now it's premature and that you're really getting, you know, your thing established, but when you're ready to step out, I believe in what you're doing, and I believe that it's important, and I want to build something that's different than what already exists. And I said, when you're ready to add to what you're doing, and you're ready to actually start building this network, please contact me. And he did. When he got to the point that he was really like rolling the ball on Abundance Plus, he called us up and said, you know, what do you think? Here's what I'm thinking. And we just started kind of spitballing ideas off of one another. And I told him at that point, for the first time, like what our 5-year plan is and what we want to do. The conversation that came out of that is, I told him, I said, you know, we've talked to other networks and we've talked to things, but I said, I don't want to feel like I need to come up with a story that sells. I was like, I just want to tell our actual story. And I just want to be who we actually are. And if we're going to do like a professionally produced TV show, I want it to tell this story because I think it's an extraordinary story. And Justin said to me, he said, Jess, your real story and who you really are is enough to be successful. I want security for my family. I want to partner with people who are legacy minded. I don't want to ever put my family in a position that they're going to be exploited. I want my kids to look back and this to be something that they look at as a treasure because their parents were fully involved in the production of it and the protection of them, and they were never forced to do something, and they were never painted in a negative light. They never have to see us painted in a negative light just for views or selling or anything like that. And in talking to Justin and hearing his vision and sharing ours with him, it became very evident that this was going to be something that I would be proud of in 20 years my kids wouldn't be resentful for. And I think through stuff like that, you guys know that. But all that said, we just shot the pilot episode. Hey, babe.
Hey.
I was just telling people about our adventures this week.
Which one?
Here comes it over here. So, we shot the pilot episode of a TV show.
Oh, yes.
That
was an experience. That was a lot of fun.
What were your thoughts about it?
It was different than I anticipated. It was a lot more fluid, I guess. I really enjoyed who we're working with.
Yeah.
We had good chemistry. It was just fun and easy. Like, I felt like it would be more, you know, having to like act more, repeat things over and over again to get the right shot. And it was super straightforward. Like, we got most of it in like one take, and really we didn't even have to like pretend because we just like,
it was all just really natural.
Yeah, it was just really natural, and I think it's going to be great. But I think for me the most exciting part is going to be partnering with Justin, and I'm excited to see how that grows and gives other people platforms and voices that, you know, are free and without a bunch of red tape and hoops to jump through. I think it's going to be really good for just the future of education and online entertainment. I mean, something to watch that everybody can watch and enjoy and get something out of.
So really cool thing that happened, Justin told us, because he was looking through different productions companies and we were working this out, and he's like, I have these guys that I worked with years ago on a project. I want to put you in contact with them. I think the chemistry will be really good. He was like, I think they'll really understand you guys and know how to capture you well. They're great storytellers. And he was like, and because you guys do have such a great story to tell, I think they're a good match. So we have the first meeting with this production company, Armosa, and it's great. Like, we were like, yeah, this is fantastic. They really understood what it is that we're trying to build, and that we have this big dream for a region, and that, you know, we want to build a farm from scratch, and we want to show the process of like start to finish on building a farm. But we also want to make this cultural impact with businesses and like our coffee house and the things that we want to do, and eventually our learning center. And we're sharing all of this with them. And it's great. And we're like, yes, we really like them. We feel really great about this. We come back to our next meeting where we're talking about like basically laying out the first episode, because when you're going to try to shoot an episode in like a day and a half, and there are lots of children involved and there's a lot of moving parts, you really want like a layout. You want a storyboard. Like, what exactly are we trying to tell here? Well, we get on that call and they're like, hey, we have a connection. And I'm like, oh, what is it? And they're located in Florence, Alabama, and they all know Daniel, who makes all the music for our channel, our really good friend. And so it was just this really cool little connection that Justin in North Carolina hired this company to film us in Arkansas before we moved to South Carolina, and they live in Florence, Alabama, and they know one of our very best friends. So that was really neat. So a lot of the people that they like know and work with, they would reference him and be like, yeah, I know him. And that was just really kind of cool, and they were fantastic. It was so comfortable, man. They put my kids right at ease, and honestly, it just felt like hanging out with friends for a couple days. It was super natural and super fun. So if you are interested in following that journey with us, we still will be doing YouTube, but the goal of this, I really wanted the first episode to be on this farm. I really, really wanted to lay that foundation of the starting place for us and honor this place for everything that it's been for us as we step out into this new journey. And we're gonna have updates soon. If you would like to be the first person to receive the sneak peek of our trailer for our pilot episode, that trailer will be available in just a handful of weeks. We'll put a link down below where you can sign up for our email list. And beyond that, we will be keeping you guys updated. We have a lot of really cool things, and my hope is when I look at this show, and we'll see where it goes, but my hope is to tell the story over the course of the next handful of years, us being able to build our farm completely from scratch and then branch out and begin to make a place in this little community in South Carolina where people can come to learn to homestead.
Yep.
All right. Sign up for the emails down below. Thank you guys so much for your support. I just can't tell you what an incredible honor it is to be able to share the extraordinary unfolding of our life with you. We bless you. Until next time.